Hey, it's Fee, and I am here finally with my labor and delivery story. The last video that I made, I was going in for I went in for a 40-week update. It was 40 weeks, and I had to go back to him on Monday. So I went back to him on Monday, and we decided that we were going to go ahead and schedule my induction. And my induction was scheduled. Actually, when I went into him, I was at 2 centimeters, so I hadn't progressed or whatever. And so we scheduled, and I still was pretty thick. My cervix was pretty thick. So we scheduled my induction for 1 a.m. on Tuesday morning. So had everything with me, and we came home. I came back home, met my husband home after he came home from work. We did some things around the house, had dinner, and then we actually ended up staying at my mom and dad's house that night because they live much closer to the hospital than we do. And that way we didn't have to leave at like 11:30 to get there by 1. We could just leave at like 1:45 and get there on time. So she's like in the background grunting. She'll probably wake up screaming in a minute to eat. But I had to go in at 1 o'clock. So that night, it was around 11 o'clock that night, I actually started having real contractions, like actual contractions. I was not guessing whether or not these were contractions. I knew that these were contractions. They still weren't like too painful. I could still kind of walk through them a little bit, and kind of move through, but it definitely kind of like stopped my breath. It was kind of like, okay, these are contractions. So that started around 11 o'clock that night, and they were actually pretty constant and steady. They were lasting me about like 30 seconds, and they were actually about 5 minutes apart, so they were coming pretty frequently. So we got to the hospital around like 1:45. We checked in, and I think it was like around like 1:50. They started the IV and like drew blood and all that stuff like that. And then around 3 a.m. they gave me the Cervidil, which was supposed to help like start thinning the cervix and that kind of stuff. And my contractions started, and they started getting stronger and stronger. And that's supposed to be in for 12 hours. They put that, it's like a little strip of paper. It's kind of like a little strip of paper, and they just kind of insert that into your vagina, and it stays there for 12 hours. And then after 12 hours, they'll reassess you to see whether or not you need another dose, or this is going to be it. You may be good. I only needed the one dose. So they put that in, and the contractions started, and they were getting much stronger and stronger and painful. Pretty much and then I tried like taking a shower, like getting in the shower and like letting the hotness like help. I tried sitting on the exercise ball or birthing ball. Tried sitting on the birthing ball. That kind of helped to help with the pressure, and as well to kind of help open my cervix, because still after 12 hours. Back up, not quite, after the 12 hours, because it was 3 a.m., so around noon, I was in so much pain, and I wasn't able to get the epidural yet, but they said that I can get some Stadol, which is the pain medicine, so I said, okay, I'll take that, some pain medicine. That was a very bad idea, because I had a very bad reaction to it. I wouldn't say I had started hallucinating, but I became very loopy. I was laughing and crying. Like, I was laughing so hard I was crying, and I just couldn't stop laughing, and I was just talking like crazy out of my head. Like, I remember like the second that she was putting it was like seeping into my veins through the IV. I remember saying like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm in the Matrix. I'm in slow motion. And to me, I felt like my hand was moving in slow motion. But my husband told me that I was just moving my hand really, really slow. But that's the kind of stuff that was going on. Like, I was like moving my hand. I was like, I'm in slow motion. I felt everything was in slow motion. I couldn't see like it was just like I would hear something, and then I would go way off on a tangent. I remember saying stuff like that my husband was a pirate, and I was like just really weird, crazy stuff. And at first, because my mom and my sister and my husband, they were there in the room, and at first they were kind of laughing like, oh my gosh, it's kind of funny and that kind of thing. And then after it kept going on for a while, they're like, okay, no, this is really scary. Like something's really wrong with her. So they like called the nurse in and they're like, what's going on? Like, is she crying? Like, what's going, they were flipping out. Like they really got really scared for me because I was like, when I tell you I was talking crazy, I was talking crazy. I said something like, I remember saying like, my baby looks like a strawberry, and the nurse is like, your baby's not a strawberry. And just really weird, crazy, like just, off the wall things. I was just kind of like, going crazy. And so this probably lasted like, I mean, and I remember because I heard everything that was going on, but like I would hear a word and I would like just randomly just like say stuff. I remember saying something about Scooby Doo, like in Elvis. I was like, my hair looks like Elvis, and like, I don't know, just really weird like stuff. But it really, my mom was terrified. It really scared my mom a lot. It was like the nurses came back in and they were like, what's going on, And they ended up having to even call like, the head nurse in, and she was kind of talking to my nurse like, well, how much did you give her? She's like, I only gave her like the little dose, and they flushed that thing out. And then like finally I can feel myself like kind of coming down from the high. Like it was crazy. So they did that, and then while they were doing that, I think they just wanted to kind of get me out of there now to the next floor because by that point, because I was in a special room, just kind of like I wasn't like in my labor and delivery room. I was just kind of in like a induction room, I guess, It was my own private room, but I was just, in that kind of waiting room while they were waiting for me to actually progress them. And by that time, they checked me again, and it was, again, while I'm high on this drug, I felt them like lowering my bed, so I was laying flat. But in my mind, I felt like I was like hanging by my feet upside down. I was like, I'm upside down, I'm hanging, so again, freaking out. And so they checked me again, and by that point I was like just about 4 centimeters, and this is like 1 o'clock in the afternoon now. And so they said, okay, she's good, we're going to send her on up to get an epidural. So because they figured 4 centimeters, whatever, things going good. So they sent me on up. So like I said, they flushed all that stuff out of my system, and I finally kind of came down from my high, and it was good. And they sent me up for my epidural. And so this is like at 1 o'clock. It was probably about, I was there for a while. It was probably about 5 o'clock in the evening. And remember, I've been there since 1 o'clock that morning, so it's already been 12 hours since I've been there. 5 o'clock on Tuesday evening, I was just got to like 5 centimeters. And I was still pretty thick. She was still sitting really high. She hadn't even like dropped down low yet. And so it's about 5 centimeters. And about 5:30, my doctor, wasn't my doctor, but one of the doctors that worked with my my OB, the one that was on duty at the time, she came in, and they were checking me just to see where I was. The nurse had saw some bleeding, so the doctor was checking me to see where the bleeding was coming from. They wanted to make sure, I guess, like, whatever, something bad was happening. And what she ended up doing, she ended up breaking my water at that point because they were trying to see what was going on and wasn't sure what was coming from. So she broke my water. And actually, when they broke my water, they saw what they thought was meconium. So they thought, the baby had a bowel movement, and the meconium was in my water. So that was something that now they told me, when I have the baby, there's going to be a special NICU team that's going to take her over really, first, and make sure they get everything out of her lungs, and they're not going to make her cry right away, and just make sure they don't want her to ingest the meconium. So that was about 5:30, and I was let's see, that's like 5:30 at night, and I was like 5 centimeters. Now, I just did not progress. Like, I just was not progressing at all, and it was probably about 10 o'clock that night, my sister ended up leaving, because, again, if you didn't know, my sister was also pregnant. She's 2 weeks behind me, so I was just about 41 weeks, and so she was, 37, something like that, yeah. I don't know, 38 weeks, whatever, yeah, she was 38 weeks. So she was good and pregnant, and she had kids and stuff, so she had been there, and she had been there all day. Her and my mom came around like 9 o'clock that morning, so at this point, she had been in the hospital for 12 hours, and nothing was going on. So she went home, and my mom stayed with my husband, because she didn't want to leave my husband there by himself, with everything going on. So she stayed, and it was like 1 o'clock in the morning, and they decided to put the monitor on the baby because her heart rate kept going up. like they didn't understand why, like I didn't have a fever, like things that would normally like correlate with her heart rate going up. I didn't have a fever. There was no stress. They put the little inserted the whatever cord to actually monitor her directly, opposed to just and at that point I was kind of like I was like 6.5, like 6-ish, maybe almost 7 centimeters, and yeah, the baby's heart rate kept going up, and again, this is like this is now 24 hours that I've been in the hospital at 1 a.m. and it was around 3. We were kind of kind of sleeping on and off, and I was sorry. We were just I was just asking, what's going on, like, because I mean, I'm worried now because I keep seeing her heart rate going up, and they were testing, when they were to rub her head or whatever, and they checked me, rub her head, she was responsive, so she was responsive, but no one could understand why her heart rate was so high, and I was starting to get scared, and so I was just kind of asking about it, and then the nurse, my nurse told me, my option is, if I want to, I can see if I want to have a C-section, if I'm concerned, like she wasn't very like, you have to have a C-section, but I could tell my mom was there, my husband was kind of sleeping, he was kind of listening, he was still kind of asleep. The way the nurse was talking was like it would be in my best interest, because I was starting to get scared, and I could tell they were kind of worried, but they didn't want to like force a C-section like right away. If I kind of wanted to wait a little bit, they would have waited, but yeah, so she was kind of telling I asked her what are my options, she's kind of telling me, and we were just talking whether or not we were going to have a C-section or not. This is a little bit after 3 o'clock, and I just asked her, could I have a minute, just talking over with my husband, and it was very scary because I was very concerned for her. I didn't want to keep her in any longer, with and something happened, so the midwife actually came back in and she checked me, and I was still like 6.5, barely 7 centimeters. So this is 3 o'clock in the morning. So I had been I've only progressed maybe a centimeter and a half from 5 p.m. to 3 o'clock that morning, almost 12 hours, and I hadn't even really progressed any. So when the doctor came back in, he kind of was saying, like, normally at least every, a centimeter an hour, all this, once you reach 5 centimeters, you should be going, and I wasn't going anywhere. So yeah, so that, it was a good decision that we should go ahead and do a C-section. So, they started to prep me for the C-section, which is very scary, and because I already had the epidural, but they added some extra now they numb me from, a little bit higher from here, from higher up down. Before it was just from my hips down, but now like they numbed me from like my chest down pretty much or whatever. And they did all that stuff, and so we went. I remember going into, and so just my husband could come in. They took me in around 4. It was actually, I remember seeing the clock. It was 4:17 when I went in, and they strapped me, like I was on the cross. They strapped my arms down, and it's funny because the woman's like, "Oh, we're just gonna put the straps on just so your arms don't fall off," which I really think they were just strapping me down, like. But and if like when you have epidural and the anesthesia, it makes you shake. I was shaking, so I felt like I was gonna fly off the table. It was just, looking back, I laugh, but at the time, it was very scary because I've never had any kind of surgery. Well, I mean, I've had my wisdom teeth out, and I went under for anesthesia for that. But it was nothing like, I've never had any kind of cuts or anything like, I mean, other than I broke my arm when I was like 10. But nothing, nothing, this is serious stuff. So I've never had anything that was scared out of my mind. Of course, my husband's sitting there, and he's scared out of his mind. But of course, he's like, he has to be, be strong and like, whatever. And so it was actually like, I didn't feel anything. Well, I felt like tugging, and that was it. Like, I can feel something was going on, but I could not feel any kind of like pain or anything. And like I said, I went in at 4:17, and she was born at 4:38. So it was literally like 20 minutes. And they had her out, and she cried, and we cried. I cried. I heard her crying, and my husband got pictures of her coming out. So yeah, so it was definitely a process. It was something that we did not expect at all. Like, I did not expect C-section. I mean, I'm just happy to have my baby girl, and she was healthy, and she's here, and she's so huge, and she's so cute, and I'm so in love. My husband, we're both so in love, and we're just happy. So